because like I said earlier, like Cardano is designed from first principles, and part of those first principles is that the key developers that like started the network off has never been intended to be the custodians and the owners of the network. This is not a privatized, this is decentralized. And that involves who is going to change the light bulbs, who's going to repair the plumbing, who's going to make sure that it continues to evolve and develop in the ways that are hard to predict exactly in the details. They're easy to predict in terms of inevitability. The laws of entropy will dictate that it is either in decay or it is in development. And so the fact that it has been designed from day one to function without having some sort of daddy, without having some sort of authority that you can always flee to when things get really difficult and say, here you go, I'm taking all my responsibilities and I'm just putting that in your hands so I don't have to worry about this. Now I'm giving you all of my autonomy. That's not how it's built, because that's not the vision of it. It's inspiring and invigorating,
yeah.
and so it's both,
and scary.
like, and scary as well. Yeah, I mean, we're watching the grassroots of completely unprecedented democratized control of communities, networks, and vast sums of money. Most people say that they want true democracy, like where everybody has like equal say. And we're really going to be putting these things to the test now, because like that sounds really nice on the box of it all. But if you're in an airplane, do you really want every single passenger to have equal say about the engines on the airplane?
Exactly.
Or do you maybe want the engineers or the pilots to have more say in some areas? And then how do you decide who gets to have that power, authority, or title of the pilot or the engineer or the various bits and pieces? We are all going to have to figure that out, and we have to do that. IOG is helping, but IOG is helping building up the network in the same way that your parent might have had their hand on your shoulder when you're first learning how to ride a bike. But the goal here is very straightforward, very inevitable. They are going to let go.
Yeah.
This has always been about them letting go, and we need to figure out how to ride that bike. And there is a possibility that we are going to ram that straight into live traffic, and everything's going to be completely like decimated.
Yeah.
I actually think that the whole governance system of it is a way bigger threat for something like that than any technical aspect of it.
Yeah.
The probability of somebody cracking cryptography in the network, the possibility of like majority of governments cracking down, trying to make it illegal, all of these things, I think are way lower probability than just the fact, all right, all these imbeciles, myself included, we're at the wheel and we're just going to ram this thing straight into a wall somehow, make some stupid ass decisions that's going to kill off the network in whatever way that figurative picture will come to fruition. So that's also why I'm engaged with that level of the governance and development, is that, well, I really want this thing to succeed. And so for as much as I think my 2 Lovelaces are worth in any considerations, it's my responsibility to say like what I think is reasonable, what I think is not, and to shut the fuck up when grown-ups are talking in areas where I'm not an expert, where I don't have, I might have you almost always have some value to add to a conversation, but there can be a very vast gap between what your value is and somebody that might have had 20 years of relevant experience working in that field.
Yeah, and that's we'll have to see. It's definitely one of the things that I think are extremely fascinating, because I've always thought that I wanted a true democracy, a true sovereignty. That's another thing, like the whole crypto space and Bitcoin as well. This idea of that you have sovereignty over your own money. I think the idea is cool, but I do not have my money myself. They're stored with a centralized exchange because I'm too much of a wuss to take care of them myself. So it's like, if you want some of these things that like, oh, it's so awesome that we can have total control over our own property. Like we can take our money home. We don't need the bank or anything. But when it comes down to it, I would rather store it in an exchange for now, at least. I think it's also a technical issue that I don't feel like I completely have gotten the technicalities of the wallet and everything down, and how to store my passwords in a safe way and all that. I'm really new into this space. It's like 1.5 months or something like that. But and this democracy thing is another thing that I'm like, I really like the idea. I think it's so fascinating, and I'm so excited to see it play out. But it's also really fucking scary that it is a true democracy, and that the majority is actually going to decide what is going to be built and what is going to go on in the community. I feel like right now, when I've joined in on Twitter Spaces and talks, people seem very reasonable. And like you said, like, to be reasonable, you need to know when to shut up and when to talk, and what you can do and what you don't know anything about. And it seems like people have got that down. Most people right now in the community, it seems like they're very reasonable. They're listening to each other. They're kind, so on. What's going to be really interesting to see is when you onboard every fucking single person in the world to that system.
That's the thing, right? Because the people that are in now, we're still very early on if you're just looking at the stats of it all, both in terms of like crypto may be worth more than ever, but in terms of market cap, if you're comparing that with the economies like in the rest of the world, crypto is still just a rounding error on the budget sheets of the world economy.